My Instagram stories got 100 laugh emojis and cost me the man I love. The first thing you notice is the space. There's a pale, dust-free rectangle on the living room wall where his bookshelf, crammed with sci-fi paperbacks, used to be. The corner by the window, once home to his worn-out leather armchair and reading lamp, is now just a corner. The second thing you notice is the silence. It's not peaceful. It's the kind of quiet that buzzes, filling up all the new, empty spaces he left behind. My thumb has a mind of its own, opening Instagram before my brain can object. I tap on the little circle with my face on it, then the highlight reel I so cleverly named The Ezra Show. The first story pops up. It's a 15-second clip of him, exasperated, running a hand through his hair because I'd forgotten to pay the internet bill again. I'd slapped a goofy, wobbling filter on his face and added a poll. Am I living with a man-child or just a man? The DMs from my friends rolled in for days. LMAO, you're a menace, one said. I scroll to the next one, and the next. A whole library of his private frustrations repackaged for public consumption. My greatest hits. Back then, every laugh cry emoji felt like a little burst of validation. Now, watching them in this hollowed-out apartment, I don't feel sad. I don't even feel guilty yet. Just a dull, stupid wonder. How did I look at the man I loved and see nothing but content? Ezra was never meant to be content. He was solid, grounded. Our apartment, before the silence and the empty spaces, was our sanctuary. It was a quiet bubble filled with the smell of his coffee in the morning and the soft glow of his reading lamp at night. He was a software developer who found genuine joy in clean code and the predictable comfort of routine. His idea of a perfect Friday night was a black-and-white Hitchcock movie and takeout Thai food, eaten on the couch. He didn't have social media, aside from a long-neglected LinkedIn profile. He existed entirely in the real world, a concept that was becoming increasingly foreign to me. My world, on the other hand, was loud, curated, and relentlessly public. My friends, especially Vanessa, chronicled their lives like they were prestige dramas. I once watched Vanessa, through a series of shaky Instagram stories, document a full-blown argument with her boyfriend about his ex-girlfriend from the back of a moving Uber. It got over 200 replies. Their relationships were a constant source of drama and, therefore, engagement. Fights were screenshot, passive-aggressive texts were analyzed in group chats, and breakups were announced with a black-and-white photo and a cryptic, poignant caption. Next to them, my life with Ezra felt beige, stable, happy, and utterly unshareable. I remember one Sunday brunch, feeling a little desperate to connect. I tried to share a sweet story about how Ezra had spent the entire previous weekend helping me build a complicated shelving unit for my plants. The table went quiet. A few polite smiles, then someone asked Vanessa about her latest Tinder disaster. Just like that, I was invisible again. I sat there, stirring my mimosa, feeling a hot flush of shame. My happiness felt like a failure. Then came the dishwasher incident. It was a stupid, mundane disagreement about the right way to load forks. He wasn't angry, just weary. "Lyric, we've talked about this," he said, his voice flat. "The forks go tines up so they get clean." He turned away to redo my work, and in that moment, a thought slid into my head, slick and easy. "This is funny." A voice in my head, the one that sounded a lot like Vanessa, whispered, "This is gold." I told myself it was harmless, just a little joke. I pulled out my phone, zoomed in on his tense shoulders, and typed out the caption. My face when he explains the correct utensil stacking methodology for the 10th time. The notifications started immediately. A cascade of laugh cry emojis. Vanessa replied to the story directly. "OMG Lyric, you did not face. At brunch that weekend, it was the first thing everyone brought up. "Your Ezra stories are my favorite thing on the internet," someone said. For the first time, I was the center of the anecdote. I felt sparkling. I felt interesting. It was like a drug. And I, a newly minted addict, was already looking for my next hit. That first taste of digital approval was all it took. Suddenly, I saw our entire life through the lens of my phone's camera. Every minor disagreement became a potential skit, every one of Ezra's quirks a punchline. I started a dedicated highlight reel, The Ezra Show, and it became my masterpiece of marital mockery. There was the time he painstakingly tried to untangle my necklaces, his brow furrowed in concentration, which I set to the mission. Impossible theme song. There was the clip of him trying to explain the plot of a dense sci-fi novel to me, which I captioned, "Someone's mansplaining again." It got 57 replies. I even posted a picture of his sock drawer, perfectly organized by color and thickness, asking my followers, "Do I date a genius or a serial killer?" He noticed, of course. He wasn't a fool. The first time he brought it up gently, we were driving home from his family's barbecue. "Hey," he started, his eyes fixed on the road. "My cousin mentioned you posted a video of me struggling with that IKEA flat pack. She thought it was funny, but it felt a little weird to me." "Oh, come on," I said, already pulling up the post to show him. "It was hilarious. Look, even Vanessa said I deserve a medal for putting up with you." I shoved the phone in his direction, a screen full of laughing emojis and validating comments, as if it were a legal defense. He didn't look, he just shook his head, a small, tight line forming around his mouth. "I don't care if Vanessa liked it. I didn't. It felt like you were laughing at me, not with me. Our life isn't a sitcom, lyric." He was a deeply private person, a man whose principles were his bedrock. He believed that a relationship was a private space, a two-person club with a strict membership policy. I remember us watching some trashy reality show once, and he just looked baffled. "I don't get it," he'd said, gesturing at the screen. "Why would you let a camera crew film your lowest moments? What happens between two people is supposed to be sacred." He said that word, sacred, and I remember thinking it was sweet but old-fashioned. His protests grew more frequent, though never louder. He was fiercely conflict-averse. He would rather swallow his own discomfort than start a fight. It manifested in quiet, serious statements. "Please don't post that," he'd say, seeing me filming him while he hunted for his keys. Or, after seeing I'd ignored him, he would sit on the edge of the bed later that night and say, "I'm asking you, as your partner, to respect my privacy." It's starting to feel like a real breach of trust. Each time I'd perform a pantomime of remorse. "You're right, I'm so sorry, it's just a dumb habit. I'll stop." And for a day or two, I would. But then the silence online would feel deafening. Vanessa would post another saga, and my friends would ask in the group chat, "Where's the Ezra content?" The craving for that validation, that feeling of being interesting, would start to gnaw at me. I convinced myself he was being overly sensitive, that he just didn't get the culture. I was curating a narrative where I was the witty, long-suffering girlfriend, and he was the lovable, slightly clueless oaf. It was a lie, a grotesque caricature of the kind, patient man I lived with, but it was a lie that got a lot of likes. And in my warped reality, likes were more real than his quiet, consistent pleas for respect. There was a story Ezra told me only once, about 6 months into our relationship. We were lying in bed in the dark, that comfortable, sleepy space where secrets feel safe. He told me about his parents' divorce. It wasn't the divorce itself that was the trauma, it was the way it happened. His mother, a woman who thrived on social drama, had a habit of turning his father's professional anxieties and personal insecurities into amusing anecdotes for her friends. It started small, jokes at dinner parties about his terrible dancing or his obsession with historical documentaries. But it escalated. She told her sister about his fear of public speaking right before a major presentation at his firm. She told her book club about a private financial mistake he'd made, framing it as a hilarious misadventure. Each disclosure was a small betrayal, a crack in the foundation of their trust, until the whole structure came crashing down in a messy, public spectacle of recrimination. She didn't see him as a partner anymore, Ezra had said, his voice quiet in the darkness, a distinct tremor in it. She saw him as material, and that kills everything. It just poisons the well. I remember holding him, stroking his hair, telling him I would never, ever do that to him. I knew his history. I knew that for him, the public mockery of a partner's vulnerability wasn't just disrespectful. It was the ultimate sin. It was his deepest, most painful wound. It was his red line. Last Friday, that red line became a tripwire. Ezra's software company had been banking everything on a huge project, a new app he'd been leading for over a year. He'd worked weekends, pulled all-nighters, poured every ounce of his creative energy into it. It was his baby. And on Friday afternoon, after a sudden merger, the parent company pulled the plug. It was a brutal, corporate decision that had nothing to do with the quality of his work, but it shattered him. He came home looking hollowed out. He dropped his keys on the counter with a clatter and just stood there, staring at the wall. I'd never seen him look so defeated. He finally spoke, his voice raspy, and told me what happened. He sank onto the couch, put his head in his hands, and for the first time in our 3 years together, I saw him truly break. This wasn't the cute, low-stakes frustration of untangling necklaces. This was real pain. He wasn't just sad about the job, he was questioning everything. He talked about feeling like an imposter, about how this project was his one big shot to prove himself. He even talked about his dad, about a deep-seated fear of ending up like him. A good, brilliant man broken by a world that didn't care. It was raw, it was painful. It was the most intimate, vulnerable moment he had ever shared with me. And my first thought, the one that shames me to my core now, was, what a story. The drama of it was intoxicating. In my sick, terminally online brain, this wasn't a crisis to be navigated. It was a scene to be shot. I saw the post before it was even made. The moody lighting, the pathos, the inevitable flood of supportive DMs praising me for being such a strong, loving partner. I convinced myself it wasn't exploitative. It was artistic. I told myself I was showing how much I loved him, even in his broken moments. While he was in the bathroom splashing water on his face, I moved across the room. I framed the shot perfectly. The back of the couch, his discarded jacket, the soft focus on his slumped shoulders as he came back into the room and sat down again, completely unaware. He ran a hand over his face, a picture of pure despair. I captured it. I chose a sad, instrumental song from a trending reel, and then I typed the caption, the most pathetic, self-serving line I could have possibly conceived. He's broken, but he's mine. I added a little broken heart emoji. I hit post, and I waited for the validation to pour in. The validation came, but so did something else. A text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a screenshot of my Instagram story. Below it, a short message. This is from Owen, Ezra's friend. He doesn't deserve this. My stomach turned to ice. I hadn't even considered that his friends, people who existed outside my curated echo chamber, would see it. I deleted the story immediately, a pathetic, too-late gesture. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I spent the next hour in a state of low-grade panic, rehearsing my apologies, my justifications. I'd tell him it was a mistake, that I was just emotional, that I was trying to show my support. The lies felt flimsy even in my own head. When I heard his key in the lock later that night, I braced myself for a fight, for yelling, for tears. I got none of it. Ezra walked in and didn't even look at me. He moved with a calm, deliberate purpose that was far more terrifying than any rage. He went straight to the bedroom and pulled out the 2 large duffel bags from the top of the closet. He didn't say a word. "Ezra, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice trembling. He finally turned to look at me. His face was a blank mask, but his eyes, I'd never seen them so empty of affection. They were flat, cold, done. "I told you my bottom line, Lyric," he said, his voice level, devoid of any emotion. "I told you what my mother did, and you did it anyway. You took my worst moment, a moment I only shared with you, and you sold it for likes." He zipped up a bag filled with his clothes. "You turned it into your stage prop." "No, I didn't. It wasn't like that," I pleaded, the pathetic excuses I'd rehearsed spilling out. "I love you. I was just trying to show people how much I care." He actually let out a short, bitter laugh. "No, you were showing people how great you are at caring. There's a difference." He walked past me into his office. I followed him, watching in numb horror as he unplugged his computer. That's when I saw it. On the monitor he'd forgotten to put to sleep, his browser was still open. There were several tabs for apartment rental sites. The search history showed he'd been looking for weeks. This wasn't a sudden snap. This was a planned extraction. The story was just the final confirmation he needed that he was making the right choice. My betrayal wasn't the cause, it was the permission slip. He picked up his box of books, walked to the door, and for the last time he looked at me. "We're finished." Then he was gone. The door clicked shut. I ran to my phone to call him, but the call wouldn't go through. Blocked. I tried WhatsApp. 1 gray tick. Blocked. I went to his Instagram profile, the one he never used. User not found. He hadn't just left. He had surgically removed me from his life. The first 24 hours were a blur of panicked denial. I messaged our mutual friends, trying to sound casual. "Hey, have you heard from Ezra? He left his favorite hoodie here." The replies were slow, evasive, no one knew anything. Or no one was telling me. By Sunday, the denial curdled into desperation. I called Vanessa, my voice cracking as I recounted the story, carefully editing it to make myself sound like the tragic, misunderstood victim. I was just trying to be supportive, I sobbed into the phone. And he just left. He completely overreacted. I waited for the wave of sympathy, for her to join me in righteous indignation. Instead, there was a long, awkward pause on the other end of the line. "Oh, wow," she finally said, her voice lacking its usual dramatic flair. "That's really rough. Listen, I'm actually in the middle of something right now. Can I call you back?" She never did. I tried a few other friends from the group. I got the same thing. A verbal pat on the head, a quick excuse, and a swift exit from the conversation. It was the social equivalent of watching people back away slowly from a car wreck. The performers I had worked so hard to entertain had no interest in the messy, uncurated reality of the aftermath. My tragedy wasn't fun. It wasn't content, so they changed the channel. The silence in the apartment became my tormentor. Every empty space screamed his absence. On Monday, I found a half-finished crossword puzzle he'd left on the coffee table, his neat, blocky handwriting a gut punch. I started doing what I always did when I felt lost. I opened Instagram. But this time, I wasn't posting. I was searching. I made a fake account, a burner with a generic flower profile picture and a nonsensical username. It took me less than 10 minutes to find what I was looking for. Owen, the friend who had texted me, had a public profile. I scrolled through his feed, my heart pounding with a sick mix of hope and dread. And then I saw it. A photo posted just last night. A group of friends at a brewery, laughing around a table. In the background, slightly out of focus but unmistakably him, was Ezra. He was smiling. Not a polite, forced smile, but a wide, genuine grin I hadn't seen on his face in months. He looked lighter. He looked free. He looked like a man who had just escaped a burning building. The caption was simple: "Good to have the real him back." The screen blurred through my tears. The stage I had built for myself, the one where I was the star, was a prison. And he had just walked out the door, leaving me alone in the spotlight with my cheap props and a silent, empty audience.